Welcome to the master collection of the electron and the living world. In this first half of our journey, we bridge the gap between physics and biology, from the smallest subatomic charge to the machine inside every cell, beginning the journey through the living semiconductor matrix and the light-driven engine of life. A teenager plays a baseball game in Ohio. He fields, he hits, he jogs the bases. By every visible measure, he's a healthy kid having a normal afternoon. 3 hours later, he's vomiting uncontrollably. His parents rush him to the hospital. Doctors run every standard test they have. Brain imaging shows no stroke, no bleed, no tumor, no obvious structural cause for anything happening to him. And yet within a short window, he is declared brain dead. No one in that emergency room could tell his parents why. Nothing on the chart pointed to a cause. By every conventional measure available that day, this should not have happened to this kid. That case sits at the center of everything that follows in this series, not as a solved mystery, but as the question this entire framework was built to try to answer. What if the tools being used to look for a cause were only capable of seeing half the problem? To understand what this framework claims actually happened to that kid on that field, we have to start much further back than any hospital chart would take you. Back before biochemistry, before genetics, before even the first living cell. We have to start with physics. There's a claim sitting underneath everything in this story, and it's worth naming directly before going any further. The claim is that biology doesn't start with chemistry. It starts one level below that, at the level of electrons, photons, and charge. Conventional biology treats proteins, enzymes, and genes as the drivers of life. This framework treats those as the visible layer sitting on top of something more basic. Electromagnetic forces that shape the conditions under which chemistry becomes possible in the first place. Before a molecule can bind to a receptor, this theory says, electrons are already moving, and that movement is the real starting point. That's the foundation for one of the framework's central analogies, the body as a semiconductor. A semiconductor is a material built to control the flow of electrical charge. It's what runs every computer and phone on the planet. This theory proposes that cells, tissues, and biological fluids work the same way. Everything is organized around a living state semiconductor matrix built from proteins, membranes, structured water, and connective tissue, all of it working together to guide electrons and energy through the body the way a chip guides electrical signals. Health in this model is described as a high dielectric state, tissue that holds and separates charge efficiently. Disease is described as a slow loss of that state, with deuterium named as the primary saboteur, clogging the system and degrading how efficiently charge and energy move. This theory also borrows the idea of a band gap from semiconductor physics, the energy required to move an electron from one state to another, and applies it to biological tissue, suggesting that differences in how tissues conduct, absorb light, and behave chemically trace back to this kind of energetic threshold. Proteins get reframed here too, not as rigid molecular machines, but as what the theory calls bioelectrically tuned wind chimes, structures that stay quiet until something, light, temperature, hydration, and electrical gradient, sets them moving, and then they respond according to their own structure, the way a wind chime resonates differently depending on its shape. That leads to one of the framework's boldest claims, that the cohesion holding a living body together comes primarily from fields, electric, magnetic, rather than from chemistry alone. Non-coding DNA, the parts of the genome that don't code for proteins, gets folded into this too, reframed here not just as regulatory material, but as part of a system for managing information carried by light. And this is where non-native EMF returns to the story. The theory claims that modern electromagnetic exposure, Wi-Fi, power grids, wireless signals, alters cellular hydration and disrupts the electrical conductivity this whole system depends on, exposing the body to conditions it never evolved to handle. Conventional lab tests look at biochemical markers, hormones, enzymes, glucose, and this theory argues those are downstream effects. The real disruption happens earlier, at the level of electron distribution and charge, which is why someone can feel their health declining while every lab value still comes back normal. Every framework stands on someone else's shoulders, and this one leans on a specific lineage of physicists and chemists who spent their careers arguing that energy and information can't be separated. Rolf Landauer showed that information isn't abstract. Every act of processing costs energy. Then there's Ilya Prigogine, who solved how life stays ordered via dissipative structures, mitochondria converting light and nutrients into usable order to hold off entropy. Robert Becker and Albert Szent-Györgyi proved that treating biology as an electrical phenomenon isn't new. Einstein's E equals mc squared even becomes a lens for aging, where declining energy production, mitochondrial heteroplasmy, is what actually ages the body. Nature has a bias. Amino acids and DNA show a consistent handedness, a directional preference. This theory treats left-right asymmetry as an expression of a deeper directional architecture running through cell membranes and water. The brain's master clock is reframed as an optical clock. Light comes in as input, biological timing comes out as output. Clock genes are treated not as independent drivers, but as responders to environmental light. Mitochondrial function, recycling worn-out proteins, and energy status are all tied to timing. Organizing tasks on a schedule is an anti-decay strategy. Circadian rhythm isn't an accessory, it's one of evolution's oldest principles. If light is the signal, the eye is where it's read, and this theory treats the eye as a data processor. Alpha waves are the brain's sampling rate, and the retinal pigment epithelium is an information converter. Sunlight carries an encoded signature in its Fraunhofer lines. Hemoglobin and DHA act as signal processors, making blood part of an information network influenced by sunlight and setting the day's energetic tone. Perception is an active process. Sunlight, hemoglobin, and skin function as a distributed system for turning solar signals into biological organization. Managing health is about managing your light. Now the story zooms all the way out, from the cell to the planet to the deepest open questions in physics. Every framework stands on someone else's shoulders, and this one leans on a specific lineage of physicists and chemists who spent their careers arguing that energy and information can't be separated. We start with the Sun-Earth circuit, a continuous electrical relationship between the ionosphere, the Earth's surface, and every living thing standing on it. Grounding, direct skin contact with the Earth, is framed as the way a body plugs into that circuit and aligns itself with it. The Earth's magnetic field acts as a stabilizing force for biological systems. Then we move into the physics of David Bohm and John Bell. Bohm's implicate order proposed that the visible world is only a surface expression of a deeper, hidden layer of organization. Biological systems are expressions of deeper energetic relationships, not just isolated bags of molecules. John Bell's theorem treats reality as more interconnected than classical models assume. This framework speculates that living systems might use information processing tied to quantum entanglement, where distant particles show correlated behavior. Until now, this story has assumed a working adult body. Now it goes back to the very beginning, to how life started. 4 billion years ago, a planet with no ozone layer was hit with lethal levels of UV radiation. This was the Archean Forge. Sunlight itself, hitting early cell membranes, is framed as a direct electrical signal, driving the first biosynthesis before genes existed. Biochemistry was constructed from the outside in. Environment first, genes last. At the center of it all sits melanin. This theory treats melanin as the first self-organizing molecule life ever built. It's described as a light-harvesting semiconductor and an anti-ferromagnetic spintronic battery, using electron spin to store information. Melanin is even capable of splitting water to generate its own current, a process named solosynthesis. It generates negentropy inside the cell and acts as the master source of electrons the rest of biology draws from. But there isn't just one melanin. 3 types divide the labor: eumelanin, the dark form, pheomelanin, the reddish form, and neuromelanin, found in the brain. The switch between them is governed by the amino acid cysteine, acting as a bio-optical switch. Pheomelanin synthesis is reframed as a waste disposal system, while neuromelanin in the brain acts as an internal photonic charging station. When this timing breaks down, the system loses its ability to manage vital metals. 2 billion years later came the Great Oxidation Event, when photosynthesis flooded the atmosphere with free oxygen, a toxic gas to early life. This forced early cells into endosymbiosis, where one cell absorbed another to safely manage oxygen, becoming our mitochondria. Hemi-based redox chemistry evolved before the rotary ATP turbine. The Cambrian explosion is reframed as an optical upgrade to cellular signaling, driven by reactive oxygen species. Oxygen turns toxic only when voltage resistance is lost. Every engine needs conductive material. Your mitochondria are built around transition metals doing very specific electrical jobs. Copper, iron, manganese, and molybdenum are biology's original optical electronic switches, with proteins fine-tuning their charge. Copper acts as a diurnal photonic switch, while manganese-dependent SOD protects the mitochondrial matrix. Molybdenum acts as a redox capacitor. Disruption in these metals can lead to conditions like functional copper deficiency or demyelination. Then there is water. Deuterium is the villain of this volume, described as the viscous glue clogging biology. Deuterium-depleted water is offered as a dielectric medium that improves metabolic conductivity, partitioned away by melanin acting as an isotopic centrifuge. Deuterium is a mass multiplier that slows the mitochondrial clock. Sunlight is framed as a deuterium-depleting reset mechanism, while fever stabilizes protium over deuterium during immune reactions. Metabolism and timing are fundamentally linked. In summary, energy comes before chemistry, and information is a physical property. Sunlight, skin, and metals function as one distributed system. Managing your biological clock is largely the same task as managing your light. This volume brings the deuterium story to the dinner table, then asks a much bigger question. Did evolution really need genes to do most of its work? We start with food. NAD+ is not just a redox cofactor, it's a signaling molecule. Ketogenic diets are reframed here as a deliberate strategy for deuterium depletion and NAD+ restoration. We even see the distinction between C3 and C4 plants as markers of deuterium content. The color in food acts as an optical signature of deuterium. Ketosis itself is a system designed for burning fat stores under solar power, where saturated fat and deuterium-depleted water boost glutathione production. Then we turn to evolution. The framework claims that natural selection works just as much through environmental and energetic pressure as genetic mutation. Take heliotropism. The tracking of the sun is a shared logic gate running through different branches of life. Tryptophan is called a universal time crystal, a molecule that helps organisms track daily and seasonal rhythms. Evolution is light-driven, and environmental pressure is the software that builds our biological hardware. Energetic phase transitions occur at points like the KT extinction and the primate to human transition. Sweat and exocrine glands provided a deuterium exhaust pipe that gave surviving species an edge. Even encephalization was an inevitable response to the environment. The bar-tailed godwit is living proof of quantum biology. It uses quantum-entangled electron pairs to sense magnetic fields during its week-long non-stop migrations. Sunlight drives this quantum coherence in biological water. Now we look at the planet. Neurodegeneration is tied to Earth's declining magnetic field. The Lachance event 41,000 years ago likely shaped modern humans. We see an accelerating pole drift as evidence of dielectric collapse. Finally, the mitochondrion is reframed, not as a power plant, but as an antenna. Trillions of these light-sensing units receive and broadcast timing signals. Geometry itself is part of the machine's function. Intermitochondrial junctions act as a chiral diffraction grating, splitting light like a prism. This coordinating response integrates light exposure and redox balance. Peter Mitchell's chemiosmotic theory is only half the story. Sunlight and photobiomodulation shift metabolism away from glycolysis toward oxidative phosphorylation. Your biological clock and your light exposure are the same task. Your mitochondria are the engine of this light-driven system. From Archean UV forges to the machine inside every cell, melanin and deuterium are the threads of life. Managing your clock is managing your light. This concludes our engine breakdown. Every volume in this series eventually points back to the same 5-station assembly line, the electron transport chain. Station 1 is Complex 1, where food electrons enter. This is where this framework places its theory of metabolic disease, a protein folding problem driven by a collapsing NAD+ to NADH ratio. Complex 2 is the bypass route, allowing ketogenic diets to route electrons around a struggling Complex 1. Complex 3 is the leak point, acting as a fuel gauge signal for the cell. Complex 4 is the sun's receiver, tuned to red and infrared wavelengths. Finally, Complex 5 is the rotary turbine that builds ATP, the primary energy currency of the cell. In this model, inflammation isn't just a chemical event. It's an electrical one, a charge imbalance where protons pile up faster than electrons can balance them. Chronic electron loss from modern EMF exposure reduces the capacity of structured water to hold energy. This loss causes tissue to shed disorganized heat and disorganized energy. Reactive oxygen species are not a malfunction, they are ammunition. A healthy cell uses its strong redox potential to deploy ROS on command to destroy pathogens. Welcome to the second master collection of The Electron and the Living World. Today we go deeper into the light-sensing machinery of the cell, mapping the spectrum and the biological vortices that organize life itself. Continuing our journey through the light spectrum, the DHA optical cavity, and the biological sorting of hydrogen and deuterium, singlet oxygen emits a faint burst of infrared light at 1,270 nanometers. This wavelength functions as a live internal communication channel, signaling the day-night shift in metabolism. Anything that keeps you in an artificially lit state pins this switch in the reactive setting, contributing to oxidative load. Managing health is about managing these energetic thresholds. Energy before chemistry, charge before signals, that is the engine of life. This concludes our step-by-step look at the electron transport chain and its signaling systems. Welcome to the final segment of our series. Today we map the light spectrum and look at the body as an active receiver of cosmic and biological signals. We will cover the spectral map of sunlight, how to read mitochondrial lab results, the exotic physics of the mitochondrial matrix, and the healing power of biophotons. Building on our understanding of the electron transport chain, we now turn to the specific environmental inputs, the light wavelengths that govern the entire system. Ordinary sunlight is a broad spectrum of signals. UVB drives vitamin D3 conversion and delayed tanning, while UVA triggers immediate pigment darkening and retinal dopamine release, regulating eye growth. Infrared light makes up close to half of sunlight's total energy. Red and near-infrared light lead to increased ATP output and tissue repair through photobiomodulation. However, blue light between 435 and 465 nanometers is disruptive. Encountered after dark, it suppresses melatonin and damages mitochondria. This is the spectrum's specific problem child. Filtering this narrow band after sunset is a critical recommendation. Modern life exposes us to the wrong fragments of the spectrum at the wrong times, stripping them from their natural sequence. We can see these energetic shifts on paper. Cheek swabs and organic acid tests reveal isolated complex 1 weakness or traffic jams in the Krebs cycle, often caused by cytochrome 1 bottlenecks. When the body reroutes electrons through the complex 2 bypass unprompted, it's a sign that cytochrome 1 dysfunction has already progressed. These tests are the windows into our redox potential. Complex 4, the sun's receiver, is reframed as a dielectric governor. It functions like an infrared masser, using the principle of stimulated emission to pump protons using light energy rather than chemistry. This mechanistic backbone explains why red light therapy directly restores ATP synthase function. Different slices of the UV spectrum flip, completely different cellular switches. In exotic physics territory, mitochondria act as transducers of cosmic flux, while the matrix behaves as a piezoelectric liquid crystal, generating electrical charge under mechanical stress. Even after death, the thanatotranscriptome shows genes responding to organized signals. Our biological matrix is a complex information sensor networked into the structure of matter itself. Finally, we turn to biophotons, ultra-weak light emissions from living tissue. Healthy cells emit coherent laser-like light, while unhealthy ones show the disordered Maillard orange shift. Amphibian regeneration is enabled by this light-driven signaling. This framework concludes that the brain itself should be understood as an evolved optical quantum computer. In conclusion, energy before chemistry. Light as the master signal. Managing your biological clock is the same task as managing your light. This concludes our series on the electron and the living world. Welcome back. In this installment, we explore the optical properties of DHA, the hidden light sensors within us, and the light-hungry hormone, leptin. We begin with DHA, the omega-3 fat that functions as a resonant optical cavity. It traps and organizes light, acting as a topological insulator and a Faraday cage to protect the cell from electromagnetic interference. DHA links thermodynamics to information theory. Mitochondrial DNA itself functions as a heat engine, with DHA acting as a natural semiconductor loaded with qubits of quantum information. Every cell must constantly decide, repair itself through autophagy or die through apoptosis. This decision is a mitochondrial process running on its own daily clock, governed by melatonin and biophotons. Think of autophagy as routine maintenance for a high-performance engine, and apoptosis as the decision to scrap the car when repair is no longer possible. Disease originates when this signaling breaks down. We also have hidden light sensors. POMC neurons act like binary logic chips, sensing the ratio of hydrogen isotopes. UVA light drives photo repair in the thyroid and resets clock genes directly at the skin through neuropsin. Blue light and EMF can improperly liberate vitamin A, turning it into a cellular wrecking ball that destroys collagen. Proper mitochondrial redox power is what allows our appetite control system to function. Finally, we reframe leptin. It is not just a metabolic messenger, it's a photoreceptor. The leptin-melanocortin pathway is fundamentally light-gated, operating through a concept called anti-kasha photochemistry. Leptin reacts differently depending on the specific wavelength that triggers it. This light-driven system controls everything from satiety to placental biology and fertility. Energy before chemistry, light before hormones. Managing your biological clock is the same task as managing your light. This concludes our exploration of the engine of life. Welcome to the final installment of our series. Today we wire the engine into the living body and map the vortices that sustain life. We begin in the nucleus. Gene expression is being tuned by light and metals under the hood. Transition metals serve as hardware for nuclear receptors, which act as a quantum radio receiver, reading energetic signatures. This vibration over shape model suggests that receptors respond to a molecule's frequency. Vitamin D and melanin act as evolution's brake on programmed cell death. We now assemble the whole body through 4 biological vortices: the eye, the brain, the heart, and ATP synthase. These spinning structures are our primary deuterium sorting mechanisms. Each vortex acts as a centrifuge, spinning heavy deuterium to the outside for elimination, while concentrating clean hydrogen to power our cellular machinery. Hydrogen is not just fuel, it is information. The protons pumped across your mitochondrial membrane are the currency of every reaction that keeps you alive. When this signal is corrupted by deuterium, the system fails. Every vortex shares 5 components: an axis, a gradient, a boundary, differential flow speed, and a convergence point. Once you see this pattern, you see it everywhere. These vortices are driven by 4 critical gradients: the proton gradient, redox potential, thermal gradients, and the exclusion zone. A cleaner gradient means a more efficient cellular spin. When these gradients fail, the oxygen handoff at complex 4 becomes dangerous. Oxygen flips into a highly reactive singlet state, creating oxidative stress at the source. Moving charge creates magnetic fields. The heart produces the strongest field in the body. Tying all of this together is the vagus nerve, the master wire connecting your brain, heart, and gut. Every steroid hormone you have, from cortisol to testosterone, traces back to this hydrogen story. They are powered by the mitochondria's engine, not just biochemical signals. Welcome to the 3rd master collection of the electron and the living world. Today we connect the hydrogen fuel of our hormones to the magnetic geography of the planet, completing our map of the living engine. Continuing our journey through the hormonal signal, the vortex protocol, and the quantum navigation of the human body. Every steroid hormone you have, from cortisol to testosterone, traces back to this hydrogen story. They are powered by the mitochondria's engine, not just biochemical signals. The choice is in the cycle. Aligning with morning light, cold, and grounding keeps your vortices spinning clean. Relying on artificial light pins the system in a reactive state, leading to fatigue and disease. Energy before chemistry, light before hormones. Managing your biological clock is the same task as managing your light. This concludes the electron and the living world. Welcome to the final expansion of our series. Today we provide the step-by-step protocol to fix the vortex and reveal the missing pieces of our biological map. We will cover the protocol to restore mitochondrial health, the light-driven signaling of POMC, and the actual magnetic hardware within the human skull and pineal gland. We've mapped the engine, now we learn how to tune it. Fixing the system requires a specific order of operations: light first, then diet, then cold. Day 1, you must be outside within minutes of waking. Direct light, no glass or phone in between, fires your master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This sets the timing for every other vortex in your body. Morning light is the signal that resyncs your rhythm. We also begin grounding immediately, bare feet on the earth, to feed a steady supply of free electrons into the system. Next, we fix the input. A big protein breakfast within 30 minutes of waking resets leptin sensitivity. We cut processed carbs and vegetable oils, replacing them with seafood and animal fats. This nutritional shift must happen before cold exposure can truly help you. We're upgrading your water to spring water with real electrolytes to support the exclusion zone. Only then do we introduce cold immersion to build brown fat and cold-adapted mitochondria. We layer in vagus nerve support, auricular tens, and slow breathing to reinforce your heart rhythm. This reinforces your elimination pathways using the fastest wire your body has. Remember, this isn't a quick fix. HRV and deeper markers take months of consistency. We also finish the vortex map. In the eye, light and venous pressure create a sorting effect at the vortex veins. In the brain, the third ventricle concentrates clean hydrogen toward the mammillary bodies. Every vortex in this system is built on the same blueprint: a rotational axis, a driving gradient, and a sorting effect. Deuterium is filtered before it reaches deeper tissue. Sitting underneath it all is POMC. Think of it as a raw ribbon cut by light into melanin for filtering, beta endorphins for mood, and ACTH for hormone regulation. POMC neurons are logic chips that sense the ratio of hydrogen isotopes. This single switch wires your mood, appetite, and clock into one unified system. Finally, we look at navigation. Biogenic magnetite is physically present in the human skull, concentrated around the sphenoid bone. This is our quantum GPS, calibrated against the Earth's field. This mineral allows the brain to respond to magnetic fields in real time. However, chronic EMF noise can confuse this internal sensor, drowning out the planet's signal. The pineal gland also contains piezoelectric crystals. These convert electromagnetic noise into electrical signals, explaining why artificial EMF disrupts our melatonin reset. Our hardware was built for solar rhythms. In an EMF-saturated world, a calcified gland may overreact to the wrong signals. We must return to the clean, predictable rhythms our biology evolved to track. Energy before chemistry, light before hormones. The choice is in the cycle. This concludes our series on the electron and the living world. Thank you for joining this journey. Welcome back. Today we explore the body's hidden crystal hardware, the DNA spin filter, and the final additions to our biological map. We will cover the identical crystal structures of the ear and pineal gland, the DNA spin filter, and the final sorting and detection vortices. Every so often, biology reuses a solution. Today we look at the final components of our map, from skull-bound crystals to the kidney's sorting engine. Deep in the ear, otoconia crystals read gravity. In the pineal gland, calcite crystals read electromagnetic force. Both use the identical calcium carbonate crystal structure. It is one reused trick, a crystal capable of converting an external physical force into an internal electrical signal, tuned to different inputs like gravity and light. Then we move into the chiral-induced spin selectivity effect. As electrons pass through the DNA double helix, they come out spin-polarized based on the molecule's handedness. DNA functions as a distributed spin filter running throughout the entire genome, adding a layer of electron spin selection to the isotope selection we've covered. The kidney is our fifth vortex. Using the loop of Henle's countercurrent multiplier, it builds an osmotic gradient that separates hydrogen isotopes as fluid flows in opposing directions. The kidney isn't simply filtering water, it's running the same isotope sorting operation as the eye, heart, and brain, concentrating deuterium into the urine. Our sixth structure is the cochlea, Unlike the others, this one is a detector. Deuterium load changes the viscosity of ear fluid, affecting how the traveling wave forms. When the fluid turns gel-like, the instrument fails. Tinnitus and hearing distortion are early warning signs of systemic deuterium load building up elsewhere. In summary, same physics, multiple sites. Managing your biological clock is the same task as managing your light. This concludes our mapping of the living system. Welcome to this installment of our series. Today we connect planetary magnetic shields to the light carried within the food we eat. We will explore how Earth's weakening shield influences our internal fuel, the information stored in biophotons, and the metabolic conversation in the gut. Imagine Earth's magnetic field as a giant invisible shield. This shield, created by molten iron in the core, protects us from high-energy particles. But this shield is slowly becoming weaker. This weakening is a sign of changes deep within the core. As the field declines, more cosmic radiation reaches our atmosphere, increasing our exposure to heavy hydrogen, deuterium, and tritium. Inside every cell are mitochondria, tiny power plants designed for ordinary hydrogen. When too much deuterium is present, it acts like putting the wrong fuel into a high-performance engine. The engine still runs, but it becomes less efficient and eventually begins to fail. As energy falls, systems like the brain are the first to show signs of trouble, declining memory and slow thinking. This chain reaction leads to faster aging and chronic disease. It even extends to pregnancy, where a mother's deuterium burden can be passed to her baby, affecting DNA methylation and development. In this framework, health problems are downstream consequences of a changing planetary environment that reduces the usable energy available to every cell. Now, look at the light inside our food. Every cell in wild-caught salmon or fresh berries carries a faint glow called biophoton emissions, energy captured from sunlight and healthy soil. Trillions of gut bacteria are waiting for more than just calories. They are waiting for the information stored in that light, a full-spectrum message humans evolved alongside for millions of years. Enterocytes lining the intestine are covered with DHA, forming flexible membranes. According to this hypothesis, these membranes act like tiny screens, converting biophoton light into instant electrical signals. Natural light signals tell the microbial community to flourish and produce FIAF, a master controller that optimizes how you store and burn fat based on the light information received. As evening arrives, the cycle shifts. In total darkness, the intestine releases low-level ultraviolet pulses, signaling serotonin to convert into melatonin for rest and repair. Overnight, the intestinal lining renews itself, and the microbiome stabilizes, ready to begin the cycle of light exchange again the next morning. In summary, our environment and our food are signals first. Managing your biological clock is the same task as managing your light. We will see you in the next volume. Welcome to the complete expansion of our series. Today we reveal the missing pieces of our map, from the asymmetric loop of the vagus nerve to the quantum navigation of the human skull. We cover melanin's sulfur chemistry, magnetic geography and professional sports, the redefinition of diabetes, and the surgical protocols of the field. Building on our engine breakdown, we now apply the theory to real-world pressure, operating rooms, NFL fields, and the extreme environment of deep space. Eumelanin and pheomelanin depend on sulfur and triplet oxygen. When oxygen flips to the singlet state, eumelanin fails, explaining melanin loss in sun-heavy regions. Melanin and potassium organize water in arterial walls. Rare earth elements can even substitute for calcium when planetary magnetic fields are weak. The sphenoid bone openings serve as deuterium exit routes, stimulated by the piezoelectricity of biting down. Yellowing teeth can even signal a clearance problem. Magnetic pole drift affects athletic performance. Siberian training offers a stronger field, while NFL injury rates correlate with proximity to the New Madrid fault line. The left vagus nerve loops around the aorta, tugging to clear deuterium from the left brain. The right handles clearance through the pancreas and beta cells. This asymmetry explains cross-species metabolism. Mammals have the most complex heart vortex, with HRV acting as a direct readout of its health. Birds navigate using the pecten oculi and run insulin-resistant as a baseline. Spaceflight artificially removes these fields, causing rapid muscle loss and cognitive issues. We see this in the ISS astronaut who lost speech, deuterium settling in Broca's area, and the Artemis II astronaut who developed space ataxia. Diabetes starts with deuterated NAD+, which shrinks the inner mitochondrial membrane. Insulin resistance is just a downstream symptom of this physical bottleneck. Robert Becker's research into soft tissue regeneration and Silver's effect on oxygen triplets connect these dots all the way to rare earth signaling. Energy before chemistry, light before hormones, rhythmic choice determines health. This concludes our 50-volume series on the electron and the living world. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the fourth master collection of the electron and the living world. Today we apply our framework to the clinical and surgical field, explore the quantum navigation of the human GPS, and reframe chronic disease as systemic signaling failure. Continuing our journey into the limits of modern medicine and the sleep repair network. Beginning our exploration of clinical redox, the vagus exhaust system, and the energetic origin of disease. Pre-treating patients with 3% saline and correcting potassium restores mitochondrial voltage, leading to shorter anesthesia times and fewer ICU admissions. This approach raises the dielectric constant of cytoplasmic water, allowing the cell to hold the charge required for stable post-operative vitals. Athlete cases show that grounding and outdoor training reduce injury risk. Seed oils, or deuterium bombs, are removed to support this redox potential. Weight loss drugs that target the vagus nerve artificially are shortcuts around this natural clearance system, rather than a fix for the underlying engine. Melanin physically migrates through the body. Arctic explorers' eyes turn blue without sun, while a tan can fade in hours due to EMF exposure. Your mitochondria tan you from the inside. Every cell emits a faint UV signal that tells your melanocytes when to produce more pigment. The body is a quantum GPS, orienting against light, gravity, and magnetism. The sphenoid bone and thalamus serve as fixed reference points for this system. Right, left, front, and back are not arbitrary. They are structural necessities for a body that must know its orientation relative to the planet at all times. The vagus nerve is also our exhaust system, venting waste heat, hydrogen, and charge. A bottleneck here shows up everywhere from the heart to the gut. This exhaust vents through the lungs, bile, sweat, and kidneys. Castor oil on the navel acts as a low-tech stimulant for this vital clearance pathway. The heart is a torsion vortex, twisting blood to generate the body's bioelectric field. REM sleep is the phase for electrical and informational cleanup. As melatonin rises, it induces a maintenance window. Non-REM focuses on physical repair, while REM clears the brain's versions of metabolic exhaust. Dopamine is an internal clock signal. Conditions like Tourette's involve tics that are visible signatures of a body attempting to discharge excess timing noise. Stabilizing mitochondrial and circadian timing can stabilize dopamine's downstream signals, reducing the frequency and severity of neurological tics. Blood is a distributed information network. Hemoglobin absorbs specific wavelengths, and well-melanated skin heals faster by managing the local charge environment. The skin is a full sensory and repair organ. Managing your internal light is the most powerful lever you have for systemic wound repair. Welcome back. In this volume, we use the pulse oximeter as a window into oxygen state and begin our reframe of disease as a system-wide failure. We will cover how variability in oxygen readings reflects energetic shifts, the true nature of the Warburg shift, and the complex relationship between sunlight and skin. We've mapped the biological engine and its vortices. Now, we examine what happens when that engine breaks, starting with a common piece of equipment, the pulse oximeter. Standard clinical practice treats oximeter readings as a simple percentage, but variability and instability in these readings may reflect real shifts in oxygen's underlying state, from stable triplet to reactive singlet. A device reading blood through light absorption is measuring information our current practice has no framework for interpreting. It is a data point for gauging whether your system is running clean or dirty. Next, we turn to cancer. In this model, cancer is not primarily a genetic disease of accumulated mutations. It is a signaling and timing disorder. Mitochondria lose their connection to the body's light-based coordination system and default back into an older energy strategy, the same fermentation pathway used by ancient single-celled organisms. Genomic instability is a downstream tool of a cell facing pressure to survive. Chronic circadian disruption and reduced sunlight are the deeper conditions that make this shift towards survival mode more likely. This energetic breakdown is the first domino. When a cell loses its membrane voltage, it must survive by any means available. This is the origin of the failure. Finally, we tackle the sun exposure paradox. This theory argues that the real risk factor for skin cancer isn't sunlight itself, but a body that has already lost its ability to use melanin correctly. Healthy melanin and triplet-state oxygen are what actually protect the skin. Chronic low-grade exposure without a base tan and sunscreens that block regulatory wavelengths increase the risk. Non-native electromagnetic exposure may do more damage than UV. Rising skin cancer rates over the past decades track more closely with the growth of artificial lighting and electronic exposure than with the sun. The modern environment strips us from the natural sequences we evolved to handle. Energy before chemistry, timing before genetics, the choice is in the cycle. This concludes our look at the first dominoes of system failure. Managing your biological clock is the same task as managing your light. We will see you in the next volume. Welcome to the fifth and final segment of our series. Today, we apply the light model to specific chronic diseases and explore the energetic nature of consciousness. We will cover why autoimmune and thyroid issues are light exposure deficiencies, the problem with synthetic folate, and how consciousness itself is a light-based expression. We have mapped the engine and the vortices. Now, we apply this framework to the conditions that define modern health, from autoimmune misfiring to the nature of awareness itself. Autoimmune conditions are consequences of a circadian disrupted state where immune cells misfire. Thyroid dysfunction is reframed as a light exposure deficiency in the UVA photorepair mechanism. Cardiovascular disease is tied to arterial melanin loss rather than cholesterol alone. In each case, the underlying timing system has broken down, leading to local signaling failures. Chronic fatigue is a state where cells cannot generate the 30 million volt membrane charge required. Depression and anxiety are viewed through the dopamine and timing lens of circadian misalignment. Obesity returns to the POMC system and fat as deuterium storage. These are downstream consequences of light and circadian dysfunction, not just a simple balance of calories. Methylation depends on folate, but we raise concerns about synthetic folic acid. It may not integrate as cleanly as natural folate, especially in low magnetic field regions. Vitamin C is revisited through Albert Szent-György's work, questioning isolated supplements divorced from their light context. We must prioritize nutrients in their natural environmental setting. Earwax and apocrine glands serve as markers of internal deuterium load. We predict that newer wireless frequencies like 5G specifically affect these glandular exhaust systems. Prescription and recreational drugs are often chemical shortcuts around a system that needs light and circadian repair first, a shadow of the problem, not a fix for the engine. Demyelination is tied to the copper-molybdenum metal conflict, rather than purely autoimmune attacks. Finally, we turn to consciousness itself, the most complex expression of light and information processing. Consciousness is not a separate neurological event, but the ultimate expression of the same energetic organization, described from a single mitochondrion up to the fully functioning brain. Energy before chemistry, light before hormones, rhythmic choice determines health. This concludes our 58-volume series on the electron and the living world. The choice is in the cycle. Welcome to Act 6, The Darkest Room. We conclude our series by exploring the eye, the brain, and the limits of modern medicine. We will cover the opsin repair network, Fovea hemibiology, geographic field risks, and the photonic famine of modern life. Building on our disease reframe, we now look at the specific maintenance cycles and structural risks that define the limits of biochemistry. Retinal opsins undergo an overnight maintenance cycle. Artificial light at night interrupts this specific protein repair, leading to corrupted perception. Darkness is a biological requirement. This opsin repair network runs parallel to the brain's own fluid vortex cleanup we covered earlier. The fovea is uniquely energy-intensive, packed with heme-based proteins and mitochondria. Its performance depends on triplet oxygen and clean membrane voltage. Fine visual acuity isn't just about wear, it's a readout of mitochondrial health. When the fovea starves for energy, sharp vision declines. Welcome to the master compilation of The Electron and the Living World. In this final act, we bring together volumes 61 through 72, tracing the journey from local structural health to the cosmic scale of physics. We begin with volume 61. Mainstream medicine often treats the eye as an isolated machine, but today we look at cataracts and keratoconus as systemic signals of a deeper biophysical breakdown. Cataracts, the clouding of the lens, are usually blamed on aging, but our theory proposes that the deeper driver is a loss of light management once systemic antioxidant systems have declined. Tying cataracts back to systemic dysfunction means we stop treating it as purely mechanical. We see the lens clouding as a local expression of a body-wide failure in energy regulation. By connecting these dots, we understand that energy regulation is not just local. It is a fundamental part of our biological architecture that governs every organ, including the eye. Now look at keratoconus, where the cornea thins and bulges. To understand this, we must return to the collagen weakness story we explored in our volumes on structural integrity. A lack of triplet-state oxygen prevents proper hydroxyproline formation, weakening the collagen throughout the body. The cone-shaped cornea is simply where this systemic failure becomes visible. Applied to the cornea, keratoconus is not isolated. It is a signal of weakened collagen. Both conditions remind us that the eye is a mirror of the whole biophysical person. To recap, ocular health is an extension of systemic health. Ocular conditions are signals of deeper failures in light management and collagen integrity. Next, in volume 62, we deliver the framework's strongest procedural objection, a critique of LASIK surgery and the risks of addressing structure without fixing the underlying biology. Corrective eye surgery is often seen as a simple fix, but if corneal collagen depends on light and oxygen, permanently reshaping it involves risks overlooked in purely biochemical models. LASIK reshapes the cornea using a laser. However, surgery on weakened tissue may be locking in a structural change on top of an unresolved problem. Proper sequence is key. The concern is logical. Why perform permanent structural correction in someone whose underlying collagen health hasn't been addressed? We are treating the symptom, not the cause. We must address the root. We recommend addressing environmental factors like light, grounding, and diet as a prerequisite. Invasive intervention should be the final step, not the first. This is our core objection. By respecting the proper sequence of health, we ensure that structural changes are supported by a healthy biophysical foundation. Sequencing is vital for recovery. To recap, LASIK risks locking in structural changes on top of unresolved biological issues. Addressing the environment first is the core of this framework's procedural critique. Proper biological context is everything. Moving to volume 63, we return to geography as we examine the unique magnetic field and infrastructure of California and the American West Coast. We'll see how environment impacts brain health. Why California? This framework proposes that specific regional characteristics make certain environments higher risk for the electromagnetic effects we've discussed. Environment defines risk. A combination of dense infrastructure and specific magnetic fields makes parts of California a unique environment for studying NNEMF-related effects on the brain. The data shows a complex biophysical landscape. The hypothesis suggests that these factors contribute to elevated rates of certain neurological conditions in the region, offered as circumstantial support for the theory. This evidence points toward a deeper environmental connection. While speculative, the correlation between high population density, wireless exposure, and health outcomes offers a compelling area for biophysical research. This research is crucial for our future understanding. This is about understanding how our physical location and the infrastructure around us interact with our internal biological fields. Our surroundings are active participants in our health. To recap, Volume 63 examines how geography and technology combine to create high-risk biophysical environments, using California as our primary example. Geography is central to health. Next, in Volume 64, we expand our scope to the cosmos as we explore the connection between iron, stars, and the human mitochondria. Cosmic physics meets cellular biology. Iron is more than just a mineral in our blood. It is the critical threshold of stellar fusion, the element where a star's energy process meets its limit. Iron marks a universal boundary. The same paramagnetic properties that draw oxygen to magnetic fields are rooted in iron's role in stellar physics. This shared property is far more than a coincidence. Unified laws govern the universe. This framework argues that the same physical principles governing stars also govern the iron and oxygen chemistry running inside your own mitochondria. Our energy is stellar in nature. We call this the paramagnetic switch, a single physical property operating at both the stellar and cellular scale simultaneously, a bridge between the cosmos and life. By understanding iron's role in the stars, we gain a profound insight into the processes that sustain life itself. We are, quite literally, stardust. The same laws govern us all. To recap, Volume 64 frames iron as the paramagnetic link between stellar physics and mitochondrial chemistry, revealing a single law across the universe. Universal laws define our existence. Next, in Volume 65, we extend our planetary arc to Mars, a planet that lost its global magnetic field and, with it, its atmosphere. A planetary warning for us. Mars is a cautionary example on a planetary scale. It shows us what happens when a world loses its natural magnetic shielding. It's a stark look at our own vulnerability. When Mars lost its field, it lost the protection that sustained its environment. This framework proposes that Earth's own weakening field represents an early stage of a similar process. Magnetic health determines atmospheric health. We combine Earth's natural magnetic decline with the unprecedented rise of artificial electromagnetic exposure. We are in a new biophysical landscape. We call this the NEMF winter, a hypothetical future where reduced natural shielding and increased artificial noise create a harsh biological environment, a winter of biophysical stress. Understanding the fate of Mars helps us recognize the biophysical stakes of our own era. Our environment is an active participant in our survival. We must heed the planetary warnings. To recap, Volume 65 uses the planetary scale of Mars to warn of a future where our biological shielding is compromised by natural and artificial forces. Planetary fields are vital. Next, in Volume 66, we return to human health to explore the concept of photonic famine and its link to autoimmune disease and anemia. Light starvation has deep impacts. What do a malfunctioning immune system and a lack of red blood cells have in common? This framework points to a state it calls photonic famine, a fundamental lack of energy. Photonic famine is a state where insufficient natural light starves the iron-dependent mitochondria-heavy processes behind immune regulation and blood cell production. Our cells are light-deprived. Autoimmunity is reframed here as a failure of the immune system to maintain its charge and timing when starved of photonic energy. Coordination fails without light. Similarly, anemia is not just about iron levels, it is about the iron-dependent process of energy capture. Without light, red blood cells cannot perform their role. The process is broken by light deficit. This challenges us to see light not just as something we see by, but as a critical nutrient that powers our fundamental biological defenses. Light is essential for cellular life. To recap, Volume 66 frames autoimmune disease and anemia as expressions of photonic famine, where a lack of light starves the processes of life. Light is the nutrient we need. Next, in Volume 67, we return to the astronauts. The proof point for the limits of purely biochemical medicine. Space is the ultimate laboratory for biophysics. Modern medicine consistently misses the biophysical layer, but space exploration reveals a layer underneath that our current models miss. Astromedicine proves the biophysical rule. Astronauts experience bone loss and muscle wasting at an accelerated rate. Stripped of Earth's magnetic field and light cycles, space provides a compressed demonstration of decline. The vacuum is biophysically hostile. The argument, if an environment without natural anchors produces decline in months, then modern indoor life is doing the same to everyone, just more slowly. We are all living in low Earth orbit conditions. If extreme environments cause measurable decline through biophysical disruption, it stands as evidence for the limits of a purely biochemical model of disease. Biochemistry is only half the story. Modern indoor life, screens, wireless signals, and artificial light is the real antagonist, constantly disrupting the layers medicine ignores. The modern world is the field of disruption. To recap, Volume 67 uses astronauts to argue that our modern environment is a slow-motion version of the biophysical disruption found in space. We are in a constant state of biophysical stress. Entering Act 7, Volume 68 delivers a full indictment of modern screen culture and the blue light that surrounds us. Screens are the main antagonist. This framework claims that sunlight protects us, while blue light is broadly pathogenic across every organ system. Light is the primary environment of health. Blue light and non-native EMF are reframed not just as eye strain, but as fundamental disruptions that alter how our protons are sorted. The biophysical clock is being reset. It claims regular sunlight reduces mortality, while the blue light from our devices carries risks that are consistently downplayed. Natural light is the antidote to the screen. The claims escalate, from tumor risks to producing low dopamine people at a population level. It even suggests that your zip code determines your health outcomes. Location is the destiny of health. Many of these claims are highly speculative and run outside established science. See this as the framework's provocative hypothesis. We approach these frontiers with curiosity. To recap, Volume 68 frames our digital environment as a primary driver of systemic biophysical decline. The digital world has biological costs. Next, in Volume 69, we shift from light to sound and vibration, treating them as running on the same underlying physics. Sound is another layer of biophysics. Everything vibrates, from UV light acting as a Faraday cage to sound frequencies. Resonance is a key to health. Our bodies are tuned to our environment. Water and UV light are proposed as natural Faraday cages, while modern technology is described as a resonance-disrupting drug. Harmony is our natural state. This theory uses fringe physics to connect the periodic table to musical scales, suggesting music could be a healing route through resonance. The universe is a grand composition. Real research into phonons is folded here into a much broader claim connecting molecular vibration, cymatics, and sacred geometry. Sound patterns determine our very structure. The volume closes with claims about yellow clothing and gold-threaded shielding. While gold is used industrially, its use as a personal radiation shield remains speculative. We remain cautious with these claims. To recap, Volume 69 explores how resonance and vibration govern our biology, offering a mix of established science and provocative hypotheses. Resonance is a fundamental life principle. In Volume 70, we face the most extensive EMF chapter, examining the planet's plasma and the serious claims surrounding 5G. We dive into the planetary energy web. We must read these with caution, from Earth's plasma tubes to the idea that technology is fundamentally cooking our synapses. Serious claims require serious analysis. Giant plasma tubes in the magnetosphere are used for speculative claims about how they channel EMF and shape our biology. Our planet is biophysically active. Technical claims follow, that 5G disrupts sulfation and that DNA behaves like a molecular wire that amplifies radiofrequency heating. Technology interacts with our genetic architecture. The framework even proposes that metal implants function as antennas and that the only safe level of EMF exposure is 0. A radical call for environmental safety. I want to be direct. The claim that 5G cooks DNA or that implants are antennas is not supported by current physics or biology. We must be grounded in established fact. To recap, Volume 70 tackles the most controversial EMF claims, from geomagnetic plasma to the indictment of wireless infrastructure. We are in an electromagnetic storm. Next, in Volume 71, we apply the framework to pharmaceuticals, reframing them as biophysical tools rather than just biochemical ones, medicine as a light-based tool. What if an antibiotic isn't just a chemical agent, but a light-harvesting molecular antenna, a provocative reframe for pharmacology? Tetracyclines are described as antennas that produce a proteomic freeze within the cell. The theory even proposes repurposing antibiotics for Parkinson's. Medicine is more than chemistry. GLP-1 drugs are reframed as exocrine jammers causing electronic starvation, tying back to the deuterium-laden tissue mass discussed earlier. Metabolic health is a biophysical process. Real patterns like diabetes rates increasing with latitude are used as evidence for a light deficit explanation for chronic disease. Patterns follow the light. From Tesla's decline to the claim that disease is a jam decoding signal, this volume indicts the very infrastructure of our modern world. Our infrastructure is our biology. To recap, Volume 71, Viewing Pharmaceuticals as Agents that Interact with Our Body's Biophysical Signaling. Our Drugs Are Light Management Tools. Finally, in Volume 72, we return to where it all began. Join me for the series finale, the final synthesis. By now, you have every piece of the puzzle: charge, timing, light, and the quiet accumulation of heavy hydrogen in our tissues. The complete story is now visible. This framework's answer to that emergency room is that the doctors were reading chemistry, missing the biophysical layer underneath. The real story is deeper than chemistry. Whether the answer is right is one question, but the reasoning is honest. Biology is downstream of physics, a layer medicine consistently misses. Life is rooted in physics. This framework builds an unbroken argument. It's a coherent system, even where it runs past what current evidence can prove. A unified theory of life. Carry forward the discipline. Follow a mechanism as far as the evidence takes it and know exactly where that evidence runs out. That is the final lesson. That is the end of the series. I'm Catherine Hornbeak. Thank you for staying with this journey through the biophysical world. It has been a privilege to share this story.